Hi everyone! Today, I'm joined by Trilobyte, also known as ShadowRaptor101, a legendary Spore content creator who made tons and tons of Pikmin stuff back in the day, and has made a bunch of other Pikmin content. And today, we're going to be talking about their theory for the new camera perspective in Pikmin 4. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks. Hey, y'all. I'm a Trilobyte. Back in the day, I was known as ShadowRaptor101 back on Spore and probably on Wikipedia and some other Pikmin-related circles. Anytime that there was like a crowd of people with Pikmin, I was kind of involved, whether or not it was, you know, just as an editor on Wikipedia or also as part of like the Pitcast that Wikipedia did a few years back. That's mostly just been what I've been doing these past couple of years.
Long story short, there's a lot of knowledge and experience in in the ShadowRaptor/Trilobyte corner, so I'm very excited to get into this. So, would you like to introduce this theory?
Why did I think you were going to say in the ShadowRaptor101 Trilobyte expanded universe?
You know what? There's a lot of knowledge in the ShadowRaptor101/Trilobyte expanded universe. So,
okay, so this theory that I had, it's a theory that I've had for a little while. I broke it down a couple days ago to tell Vantage here. The theory basically has to do with what I think is going to be Miyamoto's like quote unquote like gimmick that he's going to be introducing in Pikmin 4, if any. There is a little bit of evidence that I have to kind of break down why I think this is going to be the case, but essentially what I noticed is that in the Pikmin 4 video, if you look at the bulb orb, it's a lot different than the Pikmin 3 bulb orb, and that's something that people have already been discussing, like, ever since we saw the very first trailer. One of the first things people notice is like, oh, it's you know, like, the texture on its back is a lot different. It's a lot more like a, I guess, washed, like it's a very washed shade of red compared to the really vibrant red in Pikmin 3, and you could just chalk that up to the time of day. It looks like all the screenshots were taken like very early in the day, but the point is that if you actually look at the Pikmin 3 bulb orb, look at a picture of its in-game model, you can see a lot of differences. First off, it looks like it's a lot higher in polygon count. You can tell by like the roundness of its back and the roundness of its eyes. They have a lot more. You can see the individual polygons, and you can tell kind of where the angles begin. So you can kind of tell that it looks a little bit more high res than the one in Pikmin 4 already. Another thing that I noticed is that the eyes, the nostrils, and the toes in specific, and also the spots on its back, all of these things have very clear texture differences. And I want to say the model itself in Pikmin 4 also looks slightly flatter. It looks almost like it was intended to be viewed from top down, more so than from the side angle, which is interesting given the new playstyle where we'll be able to play looking at things near the ground. You can see that even though the ground looks super well detailed, the Pikmin, like, look at the Pikmin leaves, you can see bump mapping on the Pikmin leaves. But the bulb orb itself still looks very, very flat. The textures still look very basic, especially compared to Pikmin 3. It's a really weird change that not a lot of people were talking about. But I started to think about that a lot, and the thing that I kept thinking about was, what other games have really detailed maps, but the enemies and moving entities usually are not as detailed? The one thing that keeps popping up in my mind more than any other is RTS style games. Games where you can move the camera top down and kind of move your characters in one place, and there's enemies set on the map in other places. And I was thinking back to when Miyamoto was talking about, what did he call it? Dandori? The word that they used to talk about. Yeah, Dandori. What did it mean? It means like strategically placing, planning, and commanding the Pikmin. And commanding the Pikmin. See, when he said that, maybe it's just the word strategic, but the first thing that I think of is a top-down game, essentially. And so I'm thinking that one of the things you'll probably be able to do in Pikmin 4, that especially with the whole simplified control thing he was talking about, I have a feeling you might be able to go into that top-down view, and that'll be one of the ways that you will be able to examine the world, kind of like almost a form of reconnaissance in a way. And they actually had something like that already in Pikmin 3, in the original one, if you remember back on the Wii U Gamepad. Anytime you touch the Gamepad at all, like even if you just like brushed against it, it would instantly pause the game and throw it up into a top-down view. And you could look over everything that's going on the whole game, and I thought that was really cool. And knowing the kind of person that Miyamoto is, I'm pretty sure he was probably one of the ones that was like, oh, like that's such a cool feature. Especially because back then he was talking about how he really wanted the Pikmin to feel like ants doing a lot of work all at once. I feel like that's the best way to kind of capture that essence of like the Pikmin being like little ants moving around, is to kind of look at them from top down. It almost makes you feel like a person looking down, looking at real little ants, just kind of doing their own thing. And especially if the map is going to be bigger, that would be a lot bigger help as well. Mm-hmm. You have any thoughts you want to add on that?
Oh, absolutely. So, looking at this, I am an avid player of other RTS games besides Pikmin as well. I've played a lot of StarCraft, and a lot of Age of Empires, a lot of Command & Conquer, and this is very reminiscent of the command styles from those games. I do not think it's going to be a cursor-based command style like that, but if it is, it's an evolution of Go Here, as it's been in Pikmin already.
Oh, 100%. And I think that the Go Here thing, I'm pretty sure that was almost like, not necessarily saying like a beta testing of what we could see in Pikmin 4, but I have a feeling that Miyamoto looked at it after the fact and was like, oh, you know what we could do with this? We could expand this even more and make this into kind of like into what I'm talking about now, like a whole, let's look down over the map. And because in that format, it wouldn't matter as much if a Bulboard like looked a little bit less fancy. The thing that really bothers me is its nostrils. Like you can see in the texture of its nostrils, it looks almost like the Pikmin 2 texture all over again.
Or it's just this flat bump on it.
Yeah, and they completely got rid of like the bump, like the bump mapping on its back. They made its teeth look a lot shinier instead of a lot more, and even its toes look a lot shinier. They almost look like they're borrowing the same texture now. And they got rid of like the little wrinkles and ridges on its feet. It used to have like very like chicken-like feet in Pikmin 3. It's weird that just with this one enemy we can already make like an observation like that. And I brought this up with someone else, and what they had brought up to me was, well, remember in the early shots of Pikmin 3, the lighting engine still wasn't done, and so it might be something like that where the game is going to look a lot different after the fact. I don't think that's going to be the case this time around, and the only reason I say that is because look at the lighting.
It's gorgeous.
It's amazing already. Like it's ridiculous. Like I never thought we would see a Pikmin game that looks like this. And like, you can already see in the trailer, you can already see foliage moving in the wind. You can see the shadows reacting properly. The thing that I still can't believe that gets me every time, and not a lot of people point this out, when in the very first shot where the Spectrolid jumps off of the flower recoils, like there's like an animation of the flower moving. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. They didn't do that in Pikmin 3 at all. And it was something that I didn't even realize was not in Pikmin 3 until I saw it in Pikmin 4.
Yeah. And like one thing I want to say is Pikmin 3 has so much content in it that you will almost never see because of the way the game is designed, because it's very linear. That is an interaction of mechanics with the game's wonderful physics engine. Playing around with bomb rocks is incredible, and there's so many things you can do with it, so many little quirks of the game and things like that you will never see or you won't see for many playthroughs just because of the way the game's designed. As a matter of fact, I could actually make the argument that game's engine is only outdone by games like Breath of the Wild, which are designed concretely to have that as their main content. Pikmin 4 could completely blow away the entire environmental aesthetic by just leaning hard into that kind of engine. And I think if that's really the core change, is having a really strong environmental reaction kind of animation system, however they manage to do that, that'd be awesome. I also think one thing this ties into that you were saying earlier is that the environments are super, super detailed, but the enemies aren't. And one of the things you were talking about when we discussed this beforehand is that other top-down RTS use this trick of having the characters be way less detailed than the environments to allow tons and tons of moving assets. And this trick actually goes back to old-school animation, right? Where you have the painterly backgrounds that you could not possibly animate, but anything that animates is done in a much more
noticeable way
because it's going to be animated on top of this background. Now this is a completely different reason for doing it, but it's much the same. Or the backgrounds are photorealistic and everything else is not. And I think this is something we will see continue through all of Pikmin 4's design, especially because if you go into a top-down view where you can look out on things, even if you're not commanding the game from that perspective, everything needs to be able to load from that wider viewpoint, especially if that works while you're actively playing, because Pikmin 3 pauses the game when you do that.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Something that I'm fairly certain Pikmin 4 is not going to do. Well, let me back it up real quick. Something that I'm fairly certain Pikmin 4 won't do, if it actually goes with this RTS design that we're theorizing about. Something I'm fairly certain that they will not do is that they are not going to have there be enemy types like the burrowing snagret and stuff like that. I feel like those kinds of enemies are not really built for games like this. They're more built for games like the original Pikmin.
I actually I'm gonna disagree with you so hard on that point because I've played a lot of StarCraft.
Really?
One of the big mechanics of StarCraft 2's Zerg faction, which are these bug-like creatures, is they have units that can burrow. They cloak underground and can only be found when detecting. Most burrowing units have to stay in place, but some units like roaches are able to move underground anywhere across the map while burrowed. The only thing that makes a difference is you have to physically build countermeasures to it. So, if anything, if this is a primary perspective for playing, that's a lot of P's. If this is a primary perspective for playing, there could be some sort of countermeasure, like an upgrade that allows you to see burrowed enemies. And that would be amazing. I think that could be really cool.
That would be really cool. One of the only reasons I was saying that a burrowing snagger probably wouldn't work in this game, there's two reasons. One, because I feel like a lot of the environments that we've seen so far, and of course this is our early judgment to make off of the little bit we've seen, but maybe it's just this area in particular, like this person's backyard type garden area. I feel like there's not enough area where a burrowing snagret logically could be placed, and also playing at the angle that you would, I think, would make it to where it would be harder to aim for the snagret's face. The other reason that I say this is because one of the very first RTS games I ever played was Army Men RTS for the Nintendo GameCube, and in that game there's an unused boss that was like a giant snake, and they said the reason that they couldn't put the snake in the game is because due to just the way that snakes are shaped, it would have been really awkward to fight it in the top-down view. But of course that game was made back on the early GameCube by a company that was not Nintendo, so they probably were a little bit confused with the technology. Oh, yeah. Another thing that I do want to bring up really quick, and I actually just thought of this right now. Notice how so we're going to go ahead and assume this is a new captain we're looking at here. The captain's suit, yeah, the suit is entirely red, including the backpack. The antenna on her head is very bright in color, and her hair is very brightly colored and covers almost all the top of her head, it looks like. I think that's an intentional mechanic, once again, tailored to making the character more recognizable when you're looking at the game top-down.
Look how saturated those Pikmin are. They are so colorful.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that when we see other captains, they're also going to have really funky hair that's really noticeable. And very funky colors, so that you can instantly tell who they are when you look at them from top down. Also, something that I just noticed right now while talking all this, notice how when the Pikmin were running to make the 4, it was in the top-down view. I didn't even think about that until literally right now.
Miyamoto said that you can play from this new perspective, and it's implied heavily to be behind the back, and I don't think that's wrong. I think that's probably true as well. But I'm wondering if the real linchpin of this game is that it can play from behind the back, from a traditional Pikmin perspective, and from top down. Meaning that this game would be Pikmin 4, a game of new extremes when it comes to camera and when it comes to gameplay.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm starting to think that the camera angle that we keep seeing here and that Miyamoto was talking about, I don't think that's the quote-unquote default way to play. And that lends itself more to Miyamoto making the statement oh, you'll be able to play like this. I want someone to listen to what he said in Japanese and maybe tell us if maybe that was not a 100% accurate transition. Maybe he meant to say you will be playing like this instead of you'll be able to. But the fact that in the English Nintendo Direct they made him say you'll be able to play like this, it makes me think that this is just one way to play the game and it's not. And then the whole Dandori thing makes me think this is not the primary way. Because this looks cool, but it also gives me a Copad screenshot kind of vibes.
Yes.
It'll be a cool mode to take up close shots in action, Oh, and another thing that I wanted to talk about just before we change subjects here.
Yes.
I remember I was bringing up to you how lower resolution enemies, like you were saying, that's like a classic tactic that game devs use to kind of conserve on system power, but it also allows there to be a lot more enemies on screen. We know that's something that Miyamoto already was kind of playing with in Pikmin 3 when they had the Scorned Maestro boss battle. The Scorned Maestro, by the way, if you didn't know about that, on the Wii U, that pushes the Wii U to its limits. If you do the Scorned Maestro fight 5 times in a row on the Wii U will get like really hot really fast, and it will start like running the game at like 20 FPS tops.
Gotcha.
On the Switch, it runs it a lot better. But I think that one of the reasons they're doing this is because I think there's going to be a lot more scenarios in Pikmin 4 where you will be a bunch of Pikmin against a bunch of enemies,
or even a bunch of Pikmin themselves if there's more of a focus on multiplayer.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be cool. Another thing that I'd like to ask you. I remember you brought up to my attention how they updated the official blurb for Pikmin 4 on the Nintendo website, where it's like, there's only one thing missing from the new trailer: the Pikmin. Where do you think they are? Do you think there's an actual reasoning behind why they said that? Do you think they're trying to get at something, or do you think that was just like some Nintendo intern that was told to write something?
If there's an actual reason behind it, and there's a very good chance we're just reading into something because they haven't really shown much of the Pikmin in the trailers, it's either a new type, all of the old types returning, both, or just a ton of new types. Like, there's really a good chance, if they're taking a more traditional RTS approach like this, they flesh out a traditional RTS faction's worth of new types, where instead of having 5 types, there's like 20-something to work with.
I was already thinking in my brain, like, we wouldn't get any more than maybe 3 new types, because then that would put it at an even 10 types.
And I think that's probably more likely, but it's also possible. Like, right? Like, we're at this point right now where it's possible it could go any way.
Yeah, also, okay, here's another thing I want to bring up, because this is another possibility, and you did not mention this one, and I'm afraid to tell you this one because I don't want to put this in your head, and you're like, oh no. What if the reason is because part of the game has to do with the Pikmin are missing, like they're just not there anymore? And the reason, and the way that you get them is through some sort of integration with Pikmin Bloom.
I mean, I was right on board until you hit Pikmin Bloom, only because, not that I dislike Pikmin Bloom or anything, I just think there is going to be a connection between Pikmin Bloom and Pikmin 4, but 100%. I just don't think it's going to be mandatory or even like an amiibo type feature, right? Like, I think it's just going to be more Pikmin 4 stuff, like new types or whatever, making their way into Pikmin Bloom at some point. At least the captain's getting, yeah.
You think that we'll get like a new type of Pikmin as DLC?
I think if we get a new type of Pikmin, it'll be added in the Bloom, no questions asked.
Oh no, 100%. In fact, I am already fairly certain that we will probably learn of the new Pikmin types through Pikmin Bloom data mining before we even see anything about Pikmin 4, and that's going to cause a huge, like, that's going to be like the most insane thing that's happened in the Pikmin community since Pikmin 4 came out. Imagine if we end up accidentally leaking the next Pikmin, and like we didn't even mean to.
That'd be crazy. I mean,
that'd be the first thing that's ever happened.
I mean, I did that concept art video recently, and you know how that went.
Yeah, and I would very much like for those to be revisited, if not in Pikmin 4, just in the future at some point.
Well, what do you think? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me, Trilobyte, and I hope you guys all have a great day.
Yeah, no problem. Y'all better have a great day, and we'll have an even better great day once Pikmin 4 is finally here, and we'll see y'all then.
Woo! All right. Take care, everyone. Cheers.